Warning, this is not a fitness podcast. Strong, Fit for Business is a business success podcast seen through the lens of physical and mental fitness. What lessons about success can we learn from staying fit? How can we stay strong in both? I'm not a fitness expert or health professional. Don't take any advice just because you heard it here, be it fitness or business. But you can take insights and inspiration from the business leaders who share their fitness journey with us. I know I will. Welcome to Strong, Fit for Business. Hello, everybody. This is Vikram Rajan. I am the host of Strong, Fit for Business. I am excited to have another guest here on the show, Ms. Robyn Hatcher. Robyn, we've known each other for many, many years, but fitness has never been a conversation that we've had before. Quite frankly, relatively new in my life. I was chubby growing up all my life, and then went over 200 pounds during COVID. I got those famous COVID-19 pounds, as it were. And then quick background, just for your sake, Robyn, but some of the folks who have watched and listened to other episodes would know, I was on Ozempic for about 9 months. This was about maybe 3-4 years ago, with the insistence of my wife. And that worked. It was wonderful. It was like probably the best decision I had ever made, at least from a health and fitness standpoint, let alone marrying my wife. And it worked to the point where I plateaued after losing about 30 pounds. And then the doctor said I had to start a real exercise workout regime. And I balked. I said, hey, you said I didn't have to exercise. And so she was like, hey, can't you fit in 30 minutes every now and then? And I'm like, yeah, I guess I could. That has now turned into a real passion of mine, where I spend hours literally every day in the gym to one extent or another. And so I'd love to hear from you, Robyn, a little bit more. For the people listening and watching professionally, you're a professional public speaker, you're a communications consultant and coach for others. You're certified in NLP. For those who know that background, I'm sure I am missing a whole slew of stuff, but that might be the gist. Robyn, do you want to fill in the blanks of what you do professionally before we get into the mix of fitness and business?
Sure. So yeah, you hit the high points, and the speaking and the communication strategist. I also was an actor for a very long time. So I was a professional actor for years, and I wrote for 2 daytime soap operas. So
Which soap operas? Which series?
I wrote for All My Children and One Life to Live.
Sure.
And they were ABC soaps. And now what I do is I combine all of that knowledge, because as an actor and as a writer for soaps, you learn a lot about characters and you learn about drama. And so as a communication specialist, what I do is I help people overcome the drama in their lives, in their workplaces, so that they can communicate better. So instead of creating drama, now I help you get rid of the drama in your life. And that is what I love doing. And I do a lot of executive coaching as well. So those are the blanks that were missed.
Yeah, fair enough. I appreciate that. I don't know if I knew that about you, so I appreciate you filling in the blanks. So as a professional actor, it's vital for you to not only feel good from the inside, but also look good from the outside as well. And as long as I've known you, from my outside perspective, you've always been physically fit and in shape. Was that a lifelong thing? Is that, bring me into that world? Were you kind of in shape and into sports and athleticism all growing up, or what? Where did that come from?
Was so interesting. Like, even before I remembered what the focus of this podcast was, I was at the gym and I was reflecting on this. It was so interesting because growing up, I did no sports. I think my mother got us into ballet once and not very effectively. And so, sports wasn't a big thing back in the day that I was growing up, especially girls' sports. And in high school, we had gym classes, and I was labeled very early on as being clumsy. People just like, as a child, my mother had this saying, and she would say, gosh, you could just look at Robyn and she'll fall down. Which was kind of true. I was always like skinning my knees, all of that stuff. I was kind of clumsy. And so in gym class, I did the bare minimum. And then when I went to college for theater, I mean, and you're right. So one of the focuses on college is they wanted to train us as holistically as possible for the theater. And so that meant vocal lessons, that meant ballet class and dance class and movement class. So twice a week I had to take ballet, and we had movement maybe once a week. So that sort of started tweaking that idea that your body needed to be fit. And I'm telling you, before that, it just wasn't that connection, wasn't happening. It's like I saw people that did exercise, I saw people that did that, and it's like, I don't think I need that, because I'm
Yeah.
fine, and then we
And I guess
developed.
you were like just naturally thin. Like I wasn't. I
No,
was. I was
I
naturally
was
not thin. And
I
I
was
was
not
jealous of the
naturally
people
thin.
who, they didn't really do anything to take care of themselves. They didn't seem to have
Right, right,
any
right,
different eating
right.
habits than I did, and it wasn't that bad of an eating habits. But it was kind of a typical suburban kid. But for some reason, it
Yeah.
impacted it on me, but not on you.
Now that's interesting because it did affect me because I was actually the fat one. My sister
Oh,
was very, very thin. And if you look back on images and photos, I was never fat.
okay.
So, but I was
Comparatively, I guess.
bigger. And that's another thing that used to hit me, but I never really associated the fitness part of it because as a child, I was called the big little girl, because I was tall for my age and I was bigger than my sister. So I was the big little girl. So middle school, high school, it didn't really bother me that much. Then, of course, when I got to college, it was all those fad diets, and even in high school, I did a lot of the fad diets. Like, how do we
Like
do
what?
this?
Do you
It's like,
remember any of them?
there was like Slim Fast. I used to
Okay.
get the Slim Fast, and I would drink those shakes. And then, the grapefruit diet, all of those little diets that I would try, and I would like the teen magazines always had something that
Right.
they would try to tell you to lose weight. So I did totally invest in all of those things to lose weight. Um,
Do they work?
and, hmm?
Did they work? Not really.
Not really. Like often, like it would be, that plateau level between 5 and 10 pounds, 5 and 10 pounds, 5 and 10 pounds. And actually, I did get pretty thin for a while. And I was very proud of myself. But by then, I didn't really have disordered eating per se. But when I think back on it, even when I was thin, I thought I was fat.
Hmm.
So no matter how thin I got, and I only know that now when I look back on some of those pictures, and I look at the pictures of me as a teen or as even a preteen, it's like, oh my God, I wish I had that body now, And at that time, I was like, oh my God, my thighs are too big, my legs are too big, how come I'm so fat?
Yeah.
So it was a huge, that sort of dysmorphic kind of
Sure.
thing that happens to people. And I just grew up thinking that and thinking that I was always heavy, thinking I was always heavy. And then in college, I took the ballet class and I always thought that I was heavy, but it didn't necessarily affect me as hard mentally. But, in retrospect, I'm not sure how much it affected me. When I'm thinking back on it now, I'm just wondering how different my personality, my drive might have been had I not seen myself as other, had I not seen myself as lesser than in that body image space.
What do you think helped you overcome that, or is that still an issue that you struggle with, or where are you now?
I'm kind of in the middle. I'm extremely fit now, and the thing is, the interesting thing and why I started thinking about it before this podcast was I go to the gym a lot. I'm at the gym. I take classes. I'm one of those class people. I need the accountability.
Good.
So I take about 5 or 6 classes a week.
Which classes?
I take 2 strength classes, both of them with the barbells and the weight list. Then, some of them are just hand weight. Then I take 2 Zumba classes and a core class. And so those are my regulars. And what else I take? Yeah.
Which sounds
So
like practically daily. You said like 5 or 6, so that's like
yeah, 5 or 6, like 2 on Tuesday, Monday. Yeah. So, um, So I'm sometimes in the Zumba class with the 20 somethings. I'm thinking, gosh, I am in such better shape than they are.
Nice, good for you.
And so that keeps me going sometimes. But you're talking about the COVID 10. I got the COVID 20 or 25. And for a while it just was like it stuck. And I'm sort of working on it right now because it got to a point where it's like, you know what? I don't want this. I know I'm fit, but I know that this stomach is not working for me right now. I don't
Yeah,
want
yeah,
to see myself in photos looking like I'm 6 months pregnant.
sure.
So it's so funny thinking of Slim Fast. Now I started with Kachava, whatever, another shake thing that I do in the
Okay.
morning, and I've already
Yeah,
lost like 3 or 4 pounds.
nice.
But and to be honest, like, it's very interesting hearing your Ozempic journey. I probably would do that, except for I have digestive issues, and I know that
Yeah,
that would probably
yeah,
not be a good thing for me.
yeah,
You know,
or definitely GI stuff that happens with it. So it's, people have to. Some people just can't take it. I was able
yeah,
to tolerate it, but other people, it's intolerable, and I get it.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so talk to me how this has affected your career. You mentioned, from one aspect, from an acting perspective, uh, what was it kind of expected for you to get even more in shape, or how did that affect that aspect of the career, let alone where you are
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, so I was never when I was acting professionally, I was never to that point where I was looked overweight. Like one of the things with me is that I can look like I'm thin when I'm not. When I look like I'm a
Sure.
normal weight when I'm not, because I weigh heavy anyway. So the scale and the actual visual is always different, which is one of the things that tripped me up as a child, as a preteen and as a teenager, because you look at this scale, this is
Yeah.
the weight you're supposed to be, and this is the weight that's on my scale, but I look fine, what's wrong?
Right.
So I always looked fine for the roles that I was going out for. So no, I was never discriminated against because of my weight, or I never felt like I lost a role or lost opportunities because of my weight. So, but what I did learn is to continue to get in shape. Like that ballet class really kicked me because I was in classes with people that, when I was in college, people who had been fit for most of their lives. And so when I took ballet and I realized, okay, I'm a little behind here. I'm not stretching enough. I'm not as flexible enough. I don't have the energy enough. So even when I graduated college and wasn't requested to take those ballet classes, I continued. When I moved to New York to become an actor, I continued taking dance classes. I found that was a big time for all these little studios opening
Yeah,
up.
sure.
I took a
Right.
lot of fit classes, step classes, all that. I actually taught a fitness class for a little bit. And
Nice.
this is really interesting. I was hired by this, can't remember the name of it. It was one of those studios, and they would go and I would teach different classes. But that's what the interesting part about confidence and your body image comes in, because I got the job. Clearly I did well in the audition, but there was something every time I went to teach, there was this little voice in my head that's like, what are you teaching this for?
So like
You're
a little bit of like
you're the
imposter syndrome, as they
yeah,
say.
imposter syndrome totally sunk in. You're a fat girl. What are you doing here? And so I wasn't the best teacher that I could possibly be, and that was pretty obvious. Um, so yeah,
At least
so
that you thought of, because you felt maybe
no, I
inadequate.
wound up getting that was the only job I'd ever gotten fired from. Because
Okay, so they also thought
so
that.
they
Okay.
also thought
Yeah.
the students, and it was all in my head. So yeah.
Yeah. And then, so from acting, you made the transition to kind of your current role as a professional speaker and consultant.
Yes. Yes, from acting, one of the things that I was I learned about as an actor, there was a course that taught you how to teach English as a second language through your acting skills. And so I was given an opportunity to take that course, and I took that course, and it also had a pipeline to teaching at Baruch College in New York. So a lot of the teachers who took that class would then get a teaching position at City University of Baruch. and I got a teaching position. I did that for many, many years. And
What,
one of
what,
the
what
things,
was it? A communications course, a theater,
no, it
or
was English as a second language course.
yes, it was actually
Yeah, it was
ESL.
ESL. So I taught ESL there. And then I started developing, when I was teaching ESL there, I started developing my own course because teaching grammar and teaching sentence structure, no matter how fun you could make it, was kind of boring to me. And the other thing I noticed is that it wasn't really helping my students, because these are college age students. All they wanted to do was like go out in New York and hang out and speak English. And the way that we were teaching it was not really helping them do that. And so I decided that I was going to create a whole public speaking course for the students. And so I started doing that, and the college approved it. They gave me the top level students, and I just taught public speaking. I taught interview skills. I taught, just debate. I gave them debate topics, and it became a huge hit. And it was so interesting how quickly they acquired language when they were forced just to speak it. I'd bring in guest speakers to interview them. I created these public debates where they had to debate in front of all of their colleagues and their classmates publicly. And that, as soon as I saw that happening and how quickly and more confident they were after they had to do that, I knew I was onto something, and the school knew I was onto something too. And then I started teaching native speakers public speaking, because they opened some classes for me to do that. And that's where the whole public speaking thing came in. And for a long time, when I first started teaching or speaking, it was all about presentation skills. And I still do a lot of that. My book is about that. And then slowly but surely, I started learning about the speaker business, and I started being trained in leadership development by another company. And so that's how all of that grew.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a quick ad break, but when we come back, I want to explore three things with you. And definitely we want to talk about the book as well. When we come back, I want to hear a little bit more about the parallels that you've learned in your fitness journey, how that has impacted in kind of the work that you do with your clients now, as well as how you incorporate it. You have such a busy schedule, being an author, being a consultant. How do you incorporate fitness? You mentioned a couple of classes that you do 2 on Tuesdays, I want to say. And so how do you fit it all in? And then the third aspect are kind of what do you do when you're in the gym, literally, but then also outside in terms of nutrition and supplements and stuff like that. So we can explore those three things, and we'll start with the parallels between fitness and your career when we come back after a quick short ad break.
Cool.
Have you ever thought about hosting your own video interview podcast? Why? Is it just to bring in more clients, or is it to make a meaningful difference in your community? After producing dozens of video podcasts for our clients, we've noticed a few success principles. One of them is the more you teach, the more you reach. After all, hosting our own video podcast is a great way of nurturing relationships, not only with potential clients, but with our raving fans and our referral relationships that have long-term benefits to not only us, but to our clients as well. A podcast is a multiplier effect. If you're still struggling to get a foothold of wondering where your next client is coming from, you might want to start something simpler with a video blog through video socials. But if you're at the point where you can multiply on your success, multiplying 0 equals 0. So if you're already at that level where you're no longer wondering where that next client is from, you're looking forward to scaling your firm, well, hosting a video podcast can be enjoyable if you're not doing it all yourself. With video socials, you have a whole team where you can literally show up at showtime, play the role of a talk show host, enjoy the conversation with your podcast guests, and then leave all the rest of the grunt work to our staff at Video Socials to get the job done right for you. You have a choice of one of two options. You can just marinate and kind of think of the topics and be that armchair entrepreneur, or let's get going. You can choose a time for about 20-30 minutes in my Calendly. Go to vikramrajan.com. It's my full name.com, vikramrajan.com. We'll spend 20-30 minutes brainstorming what should we call your show? How's your audience going to find your show? Why will they share your episodes with others? Because quite frankly, it's that sharing that leads to more word of mouth referrals. If you're not quite ready, You can go to videosocials.net/topics and download our blog Brainstormer, and then we can have a conversation about the kind of topics that your video blog and video podcast should explore. Again, my name is Vikram Rajan. I'm the co-founder of Video Socials, and I'm looking forward to growing with you. And we're back with Robyn Hatcher. Robyn, you were sharing a little bit more about your journey professionally from actor to professor to consultant. I'd love for you to share more about the fitness journey and how that's impacted your career over these years. How do you feel it has impacted? It has. You mentioned you found your own COVID-19, so to speak, at 19 pounds, etc. But how has it affected you, both in a positive way or even a negative way? Like, how has the fitness journey helped your career?
Yeah, I feel like the fitness journey is so important because you need a lot of stamina to do what I do. And stamina is only created through working out and exercising. I really believe that. And so that persistence of doing something continually, doing something all the way, really going for something, that has a huge parallel between being an entrepreneur. Because I used to hate this. I still hate the phrase like no pain, no gain, you know. But so working out is a process. Sometimes I can do I can press like 40 pounds. Sometimes I'm just going to do the 20, and to know that that is a process, that my muscles are growing and all of that. Same as the entrepreneurial work. Sometimes I have a lot of work, sometimes I have a lot of prospects, sometimes not. But how do you continue to grow and work? So what I do know that doesn't work is sitting down and not taking a class or not doing my stuff. That is not going to work, and the same in business, and if you sit there and wait for the phone to call, that's not going to work. So it's really that parallel thing of you have to put in the effort to get the results. And those results are going to depend on how much effort you put out there.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot about consistency and being persistent and
Right.
getting out of that comfort zone that where you're pushing
Yeah.
yourself and progressing, even when you don't feel like doing it, you at least do a little bit. And
Yeah.
I get that feeling of like, all right, let me just get on the treadmill for a little bit, and then it ends up being a good hour and a good
Right.
incline.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so if you put yourself in an environment to at least do a little bit, something is better than nothing. And then
Right. Right.
you get
And
addicted
that's
in
why
another.
classes are so great for me, because it's that built-in accountability. There are neighbors. I live in a building. My gym is right next door to my building, so that's like really makes it
Yeah,
so easy, and so hard sometimes.
I
So
get it.
it can go
For
both
many
ways.
many years that I have a gym in our building, and so for most of the time that I've been here, it's been 15 years.
Right,
For most of that time, for the first 10 years, never went to the gym. I
right,
hardly ever, like very very sporadically. For the
yeah,
past couple of years, it's been extremely consistent, but that's a very new thing. So I get the feeling.
yeah, yeah. So I have certain neighbors that will go to the same classes, and so that creates this accountability. So there's this thing in my head that if I don't show up, they're going to be disappointed, so it's like whatever it takes is sometimes. And I realize even for my business, I have some accountability groups that I join because I know that that's the kind of person I am. I need somebody to hold me accountable. And so that's how the gym and the journey has really helped me, because you've got this class, I'm going to be there. If there's no class, I don't know.
I get it. Yeah. You mentioned the saying, no pain, no gain. That's obviously a very famous one. Are there any other mantras or lessons or saying that you've picked up along the way, let alone from your family or from yourself, that has a nice parallel between the fitness world and the business world?
As I think about it, nothing that big jumps out.
Yeah. But you mentioned consistency.
But one
Consistency.
thing that I use and I think is really important, and this is what I teach a lot of my one of my topics, is that whole thing. You don't have to be perfect to make an impact. And so that whole perfectionism is that it's better done than perfect. So
Yeah.
the fact that I may never have a perfect body, whatever that means. I may not have that perfect body. And my career may not be perfect, but you have to keep going at it. And another key phrase that I use and I coin is you have to own it while you hone it. And that goes back in the fitness. I use it in my keynotes. Even have a keynote called that. And in that phrase, when I'm using it in a keynote, it means like you know that you have this gold inside of you and you have to own it, but you can still continually work on it. And that's the same in the fitness arena. It's like own what you have. And that's one of the things, like even when I was getting in touch with all of this COVID weight, one of the things I had to do was like, okay, this is you now. Own what you have. That doesn't mean you can't continually hone it to get it better. It doesn't mean that you have to give up and just continue eating. What it means is you have to figure out what's working for you and then have it work and keep honing it, but own what it is you have. Because when you don't do that, you're negating that. And then that's what causes a lot of the problems, the issues, the thought patterns, the dysmorphia, all of that, because you haven't owned what you already have.
Yes, that's really, really insightful. So how have you honed the nutrition side of it? I always keep hearing that, most of weight loss and fitness happens more in the kitchen than the gym. And I've been on an intermittent fasting kick for the past 2, 3 years now. So that's become part of my life. And I haven't gotten to the point of like literally weighing and measuring out food, but that
Right.
might be like the final step to lose my little belly that I have. What about you? You mentioned protein shakes in the morning. How do you incorporate kind of the food aspect of your life?
Yeah, I one of the things that I need to be careful of, like I like intermittent fasting. I do some of that, and I did that really religiously for a while, and that really did help with the weight loss. And I saw a nutritionist because of my intestinal issues. I've always had intestinal issues and digestive issues and gut health issues, and so I'm gluten intolerant. So whenever I slip a little bit, I have to pay for it, and it's
Mhm.
not pretty. So I saw a nutritionist once, and she was very helpful in helping me do things. But again, I'm not. One of my downfalls is I'm not a consistent person. Like I just don't have that built-in consistency, and that's why I need the accountability of the classes
Sure.
and all of that. But nutritionally, I'm really lucky because my husband loves to cook.
Nice.
So my husband cooks every single dinner. And he loves to, and he cooks healthy. He cooks and he knows
Even
my,
better. Because
yeah,
that they have a pro and con of someone
yeah,
who loves to cook. They're going to cook great food, but it may not always be the healthiest. But
exactly,
like you got
exactly.
that right.
So he takes into account my dietary issues. So we'll eat, and I try not to restrict a lot of things because I know that that can be very
That backfire.
harmful,
Right.
and lead to issues. So I don't. The only thing I really do restrict, and that's only because of health reasons, is the wheat and the gluten. And then one of the things is really just lowering the proportion and lowering the portions. So I
Yeah.
eat smaller portions when I can, and I snack less than I can. And I buy a lot of sort of buying a lot of celery and carrots so that when I do want to snack, they're there, and walnuts. So I've got the walnuts, the celery, the carrots, some hummus, some rice cakes. Those are my snacking foods. And then dinner, I'll have what I want.
Nice. That's pretty cool. Uh,
Yeah.
Two last questions before I let you go, Robin. I want to hear if there is anyone that you can rave about that is fit for business that you would know about, but I'll leave you off the hook for that for a moment so you can think. But a little bit simpler question. In the world of vitamins and supplements, do you believe in all that stuff? Do you take any of it? Do you attribute it to any of your professional success and fitness
Yeah.
success?
I do take vitamins. And the Kachava shake has a lot of vitamins in it, so they sort of really caution against taking vitamins additionally.
Okay.
And then I was listening to a podcast the other day from this doctor who was a nutritionist, and she's like, nobody should take any supplements. He said supplements don't work. You should just use food. And like, so this doctor, the podcaster kept asking all these specific, well, what about this? You don't really need that.
Do you remember the show? Do you remember the podcast that?
I do. Let me think. I think it was, oh gosh, was it Speaking of Psychology, or it was either that or it was The One You Feed.
Okay.
Yeah. And like after I finished listening to it, I just went, what are we doing?
So you're awful. I can go both ways. I get it. I take a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm always rolling my eyes when I do it because I'm like,
I know,
I
right?
don't know if it works or not. I'm like, I'll try anything.
And she's like,
But
well, sometimes when you do take some, and then she brought in the placebo effect. Of course, it's like,
I'm like, you know what? I'll take the placebo effect.
right.
That's fine. Whatever works. If it's gonna, and literally, like I'm mixing tons of stuff into an energy shake, I guess, before the workout. And I'm like, look, it gets me to the gym. It's kind of part of my ritualistic aspect before I go to the gym. So I get it. So,
Yeah.
but is there any supplements that you do still take despite or in spite of the
Well,
podcast brainwashing?
just heard that 2 weeks ago, so I'm like, now I'm really totally on the fence. But I take biotin for
Yeah.
my skin. And that's so funny because some of the reason why I think I take the biotin is that it comes in gummies, and I really love gummies, so it gives me a really good excuse to take a gummy. So I take that, and then they multivitamin. I have that, yeah.
Okay.
And then I swear, and she even debunked that. Whenever I have a cold coming up, I always love Zicam and zinc, and it really shortens my cold symptoms. I don't care if it's placebo effect, but
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'll take it. Phew. Is there anyone that you know of that you know personally that you'd love to rave about, who you feel is very fit for business, strong, mentally, health and fitness wise, let alone professionally?
I know so many. But the one person who came to mind, she actually has her own podcast, and pretty high ranking podcast, and she speaks about burnout. Kate Donovan is her name. And her podcast is Fried, the Burnout Podcast. And why I think about Kate is I remember being floored once when she said that she was a rower. And I'm like, she would get up at like 5 o'clock, 2 days a week to go rowing. And I'm like, you're crazy. And she used to be an acupuncturist, so she knows a lot about fitness. And she struggles with weight issues, which she's dealing with now. But and one of the things that she was challenged with, was so appalled with, that she does all this rowing. And now she's actually on this other fitness thing that she takes these classes like early in the morning, like I think 5 days a week or something, like to get stronger.
Okay.
And so I love that. And so I feel like that is fit, physically fit. And
Absolutely.
so sometimes you don't even know who's physically fit. And then I
True.
have another colleague who is a plus size pole dancer. And when you follow her, Roz the Diva is amazing. If you follow her on Instagram, she is,
I don't know if I'll be allowed to, but
I know, decidedly.
professionally, I'm
I
going to
know,
have
it's very funny. And she teaches pole dancing. And so she's decidedly overweight, like there's no questions asked. But she has these videos where she's bench pressing like hundreds of pounds. She's like,
to. Shit.
amazingly fit, and does these pole dancing classes and teaches pole dancing classes, and is in the gym constantly lifting and showing lifting and teaching lifting and doing training. And I think, wow, that is astonishing to me, and just it's such a great indication that fit doesn't always look like you think it looks.
Likewise, strength, right? That
Yes.
it's look that the strength of muscle, let alone strength of discipline. You mentioned Kate, waking
Yeah.
up to row at 5 a.m. That it's
Yeah.
not only strength, it's strength of character, strength of discipline, let alone strength of body. So that's
Right.
tremendous.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, how can people get a hold of you? Tell us more about your book, and can people preview your book anywhere? Robyn Hatcher.
Yeah, my book is an old book. I need to write a new one. I shall write a new one. I want to write a new one. And my book is Standing Ovation Presentations. And what it does is it talks about presentation skills and communication skills in an analogy from my acting and my soap writing days. So I have something that I call the ActorTypes, which are your communication styles, your communication DNA, I like to call it now. It's like how you show up and what you might need to borrow to show up more impactfully, more effectively, and more present. And so that's on Amazon. And I also do vocal training. I have a vocal training CD on Amazon, and you can find all about that and take the actor type quiz on my website, which is robynhatcher.com. That's Robyn with a Y, Hatcher.com, and find all that under resources.
That's tremendous. We'll link to all that in the show notes so it'll be easy for people to click into it. Robyn, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for bringing us into your fitness journey and your professional journey. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Vikram. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Likewise.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Strong, Fit for Business. I've been your host, Vikram Rajan, co-founder of Video Socials. You can share this video podcast through YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Spotify, and more. Together, we can be strong, fit for business.